Good morning to you all. In today's lesson, we're going to be answering the question, what is the Human Genome Project and why do we need to know about it? This is What's Your Question? Let's go. Before we get started on looking into the Human Genome Project, I've put some questions here for you to have a think about to recap some of the other parts of the GCSE topic that this is included in. Can you have a think about those 4 questions? Maybe pause the video here, see if you can write down the answers, maybe put them in the comments, or just make sure you can remember the answers to those questions. They are, what is a non-communicable disease? What's a benign tumour? What's a malignant tumour? And what happens if cancer cells get caught in a capillary? Pause the video, have a go. Right, great. So, a non-communicable disease then is a disease which can't be communicated from one person to another one. We're talking about diseases here you're generally born with. We're talking about genetic diseases, things like cystic fibrosis, sickle cell anemia, Huntington's disease as well are all examples of genetic diseases, non-communicable diseases. The next question was, what's a benign tumour? A benign tumour is one that's not going to spread around the body or continue to grow very quickly. This means we generally don't class these types of tumours as cancer. They're generally not ones we need to worry about. They are ones that will not keep growing and growing, and so they can't spread around your body and cause the issues that cancerous tumours can. Question 3 is our cancerous tumour. It's called a malignant tumour. It's called this because it can grow, it continues to duplicate, it grows in size, and also if it's near to a transport system like the blood or the lymphatic system, it can transport itself around your body to other places and then continue to grow there as well. When it does this, we call this metastasis, and this is where those tumours are spreading around your body and you get multiple tumours all over the body, causing lots of damage and being more difficult to treat. The earlier we catch these types of tumour, the easier they are to remove. The problem is that we cannot leave any cells of these types of tumour in the body, and if we do, they will come back, they will not go away, so it's important to make sure that you get every single cell of a malignant tumour. The final question was, what happens if one of those cells gets caught in something like a capillary? If it does that, it will grow inside that capillary, form a tumour inside that capillary and block that off, causing that blood to no longer be able to travel through that capillary anymore, which is obviously quite a big problem. On to the next part of the lesson then. Okay, so this lesson, I've placed your objectives here, and your 3 objectives are the following. We're going to state what the Human Genome Project is. We're going to describe which diseases the Human Genome Project has helped us to treat, and we'll explain the ethical issues associated with the knowledge of the human genome. Okay, so what is the Human Genome Project? Before we can answer this question, we first need to know what we mean by the human genome. The human genome is all of the genetic information inside of a human cell. So we know there's 46 chromosomes in most of those cells. We're not talking about the sex cells. They only contain 23 chromosomes and they will be encapsulated in this information, but we're looking at the full genetic information, not just the sex cell or the egg cell. This research started in 1990 and lasted until 2003, so it lasted for a total of 13 years. And the Human Genome Project's general aim was to work out the job of each of the genes within the human genome. They were trying to find out exactly what each of those genes does and be able to describe exactly what effect it will have on the body as you're growing up. So if they were to map the human genome of a child before it was born, they'd be able to say what colour its eyes would be based on its genome, the colour of its hair, might be able to say whether they're predisposed to being a bit more tall, be able to say the colour of their skin, and things like those. And they'll also, crucially, be able to predict whether they're likely to end up with any specific genetic diseases, which is really, really important and helpful for us to be able to work out how to treat them as well. We can better prepare for what's going to happen to those people, and they can, if they're more likely to get something like diabetes, for example, they can prepare themselves and stop themselves from getting that illness, if it's type 2, by monitoring their diet and making sure that doesn't happen. Of the diseases we generally know about, because of the Human Genome Project, there are a few that are there's a few different things we can do with them. With diseases like breast cancer and Huntington's disorder, because of the Human Genome Project, we can look into people's DNA and see whether they have the genes that make them likely to get these illnesses. Things like Huntington's disease, there's not much we can do about it, but people can prepare themselves if they want to for this happening to them in later life. With things like breast cancer, which we can predict if you're more likely to have it, they generally will do tests on people whose parents have breast cancer to allow them to say you're likely to get this as you grow older, or you're not. You don't have the gene to make you likely to get this. And then one thing they can do with people who do have the gene is they give them the option to get what's called a mastectomy, where they cut off the breast tissue. Famous celebrities have done this. People like Angelina Jolie have chosen to do this. And if they remove that breast tissue, it means that they are then unlikely or unable to have that tissue form cancer. This means they're then less likely this to happen, more likely to survive for longer. The other thing we can do with cancer is we can look at the DNA of those cells that make up the tumours. This means that we can look at those genes and see exactly which part of the genetic information is causing the issue, and we can treat the cancer based on which part of the DNA has mutated and caused this to happen. This is really, really useful because it means that you're getting specific treatment based on the exact type of cancer that you have. They're not treating you incorrectly. It means they'll be better able to treat you, and you will then be more likely to survive. Finally, we need to talk about the ethical issues surrounding the Human Genome Project. We need to think about, in terms of not just whether we can do it, whether we should do it. It's like that quote from Jurassic Park, which is, they kept thinking whether they could do it and they never thought about whether they should do that thing, which was making dinosaurs in that case. But obviously we're not talking about making dinosaurs, we're talking about checking your DNA to make sure if you're going to get cancer or not. Now, in terms of that one, there are some ethical issues in terms of religious reasons. People think about whether they should be doing it because people think they're playing God, and a lot of religions disagree with it. In terms of checking people's DNA, some people don't like the idea of checking the DNA of babies and children because, especially if they're not born yet, or if they're before the age where they can be terminated, then it's not really particularly great to be able to pick based on their DNA. And then choose the ones that you do want and the ones you don't. It's not the nicest thing in the world, and currently I don't think it's something that we do in every case, at least. Also, we have consent, because obviously you have to be able to give consent to take something of yours, and your genome is yours as much as anything else is. So for them to be able to check your genome is definitely something you need to consider in terms of the ethics of these. How do we get consent from people? It's easy with people who are adults, because you can say I want it or I don't, but with children who've got certain things, it generally falls to the parents, and is it right that the parents are then choosing whether you have something and you know something or you don't? And as I said before, with people who aren't born yet, again, that's not particularly great. And this links to privacy, because obviously you should be able to know this or not know this, and also it links to the idea of collection, storage and release, because the government, when it comes to collect data, isn't always the best at keeping hold of it, and certain hackers obviously are trying to get into these things and find it, and if they're finding out that sort of information about you, is it right that they can hold this information? How long should they be able to hold it for? There's lots of ethical considerations to take into place here. For the most part, the Human Genome Project has been a really helpful thing in terms of treating diseases and finding out that information, but again, there are lots of ethical considerations, so we need to make sure that we are thinking about those where possible. Thanks very much for watching. Make sure you stay safe, stay alert, stay curious, and subscribe.